In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation, Patricia Kind in honor of her brother, Henry van Ameringen, Arcus Foundation, the estate of Richard W. Weiland, and by the annual support of In the Life members like you.
Coalitions and allies provide vital support on any issue. When we first investigated the 2009 anti-homosexuality bill in Uganda, we witnessed how pressure from an international community had contributed to this bill stalling.
Embassies in Uganda began speaking up publicly against the bill. The U.S. ambassador started speaking publicly on the record.
Tonight on In the Life, renewed efforts to educate and raise awareness on the status of the Ugandan bill. And later, the work of Reverend Dr. Welton Gaddy, an ally for LGBT faith inclusion.
We sort of see Jerry Falwell, but then he starts to talk, and it's a whole new world.
On February 14, 2010, the Ugandan Unitarian Universalist Church took a stand in Kampala against legislation proposed by the Ugandan parliament that would impose the death penalty on serial offenders of homosexual acts. 3 days later, Pastor Martin Sempa held a demonstration supporting the 2009 Anti-Homosexuality Act.
So we are going to pray for Honorable Bahati for 3 minutes. And then after that, we are going to take another 3 minutes just to weep together for the children and the people of Africa and the rest of the world. That God will redeem us from this evil of Sodom.
You cannot separate Christianity, like in Uganda, with politics, because they're almost the same.
Deliver us from evil. Deliver us from Sodom.
There's no separation between church and state.
The important thing to remember about what's going on in Uganda is all these right-wing fundamentalists in America that have been trying so hard to pass their agenda and persecute us here, they haven't been able to. So they're exporting this agenda overseas.
On the morning of February 2, 2010, a Ugandan man seeking asylum in the U.S. spoke at a press conference for the American Prayer Hour, an LGBT-inclusive alternative to the National Prayer Breakfast.
I feel so uncomfortable when I stand here before such good people, great people, and hide myself, hide my face, hide my identity. It hurts. I'm Moses, I'm a Ugandan. I am gay and...
So I have actually a lot of fear. Fear, of course, for my life and fear of exposure.
2 days later, government officials from around the world attended the National Prayer Breakfast, organized by the Fellowship Foundation.
Each year at the National Prayer Breakfast, all these politicians, the president, senators, members of Congress, world leaders, business leaders, they go to the National Prayer Breakfast. They think it's some benign event. They have no idea that the group behind this is this radical, dangerous organization, the family.
For too long, the American people have been in the dark about the Fellowship Foundation, more commonly known in Washington as the family.
The family is the oldest and arguably most influential Christian conservative organization in Washington, and one of the very few that's really international. I lived with the group for about a month, and then after that spent literally years researching it in archives and interviewing people and trying to sort of put together the whole history and chronology of this of this organization.
The family is not typical of American evangelism. It's a very elite group. It's a network. Its primary focus appears to be foreign policy.
Jeff Charlotte's research reveals the family's influence on Uganda.
The dictator of Uganda, Museveni, has been the family's key man for Africa since 1986, and he's their guy. They began in the early 90s building a broader base, and I think they were sort of the vanguard of the great sort of American evangelical intervention in Uganda. They helped set up a Ugandan national prayer breakfast. They run a parliamentary prayer group, and the men who run that are all family members, and these are the guys who are responsible for the 2009 Anti-Homosexuality Act.
Homosexuality is illegal in Uganda. It has been illegal since the colonial times. Before this bill came out, homosexuality was illegal and it was punishable by 14 years in jail.
If this bill were actually to become law in Uganda, consensual conduct would be subjected to life imprisonment with the possibility of the death penalty for certain homosexual acts or repeat offending acts. All Ugandans would be required to report any suspected homosexual to the police within 24 hours. It would criminalize any discussion, expression, any outreach to LGBT communities, including health-related outreach.
I grew up fighting all these feelings in me because any slight mistake, you find yourself in jail. Any slight mistake, your family rejects you, excommunicates you.
I remember when I was raped by this policeman, there was no way I could go to a doctor or...
I remember spending a whole week without eating, in bed, terrified.
I knew if I did tell the health workers, they would, of course, not give me help.
It was so traumatic.
Another Ugandan man is publicly speaking out against the sanctioning of homophobia in Uganda.
When I was first told that you're going to be the leader of SMAG, Sexual Minorities Uganda, so this does not mean the leader of SMAG alone. This means the leader of the Ugandan LGBT community. That means I'm going to be in the media every day. That means I'm going to be discriminated even more. That means every person in my family is going to know about me.
Radio Uganda USA, and the time is 9 minutes after 8 o'clock right here in Boston, Massachusetts. You being an African and gay at the same time, it really contradicts with what actually many Africans believe as being the norm.
The issue of homosexuality was in Africa because looking in the past, when the British colonists came to Africa and they were introducing laws, they had to include a law on homosexuality, meaning they were condemning that something that was already existing. Okay. So being African and being a homosexual is like being anywhere and being a homosexual.
And what is the culture of Africa? The basic principles of the Bible. Leviticus says, do not lie with any man.
The Bible embraces one thing, and that is love. If someone has that sexual orientation, it is his right between him and his God.
Homosexuality is just like any other sin. We accept that we have sinned and we ask God to forgive us. Now, the only problem is when somebody doesn't accept that what I'm doing is wrong.
Pastor, I was born this way. I do not need to apologize. I'm not a sinner, and I not need to be corrected.
The notion that the current criminal law that's in place that criminalizes consensual homosexual conduct is somehow a traditional African value is really quite preposterous. It has its origin in very racist, misogynistic views about human sexuality. And so it's a colonial import to begin with.
Foreign influences continue today. In 2009, Reverend Dr. Kapia Kaoma of Political Research Associates attended anti-gay seminars in Uganda. In his report, he describes the link between these seminars and the anti-homosexuality bill.
So I heard that the evangelical Christian right is coming to Uganda to hold this anti-gay seminar. But when I heard that, I took that as an opportunity to go and listen to what was being said.
One of the speakers at the anti-gay seminar was American Scott Lively, who calls himself one of the most knowledgeable and articulate opponents of the homosexual agenda.
They misled people, and I kept on saying, these guys are lying to people in the name of religion, talking about how dangerous gays are in this world. They are violent people, they are out to kill, they are the ones who are responsible for the molestation of kids in the world, they are the ones who are responsible for HIV. All sorts of evil were put on this small group of people. He also met with the parliamentarians of Uganda for 4 hours, teaching them about this international gay agenda to take over the world and why Uganda should stand up against it. The bill which came from Uganda is the direct product of this hate seminar which was held in Uganda.
For us, we always thought people from America, people from Europe, people from the West are kind of liberal and very more understanding to the issues of sexuality and sexual rights. But then I was very surprised when Reverend Kapia Kawoma told me these people are actually here to condemn homosexuality and say it is really not acceptable.
This is what has made me question, what is the agenda of my brothers and sisters in the evangelical movement when it comes to Africa? Do they really care what happens to other people's lives? No. I don't think they do. They are interested in using Africa for their own political gain.
Senator Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma, longtime family member, and one of the very few that's extremely candid about what he does with them. He goes over to Uganda, traveling with lots and lots of money. He can say it's a private trip. You're a U.S. senator. When you go to a foreign country, our embassy meets you there. It's not a private trip. You're a representative of the most powerful nation on the earth, and you say you hate gay people, and you say you have money to share. And here's a really, truly beleaguered, desperately poor nation. It's pretty conservative anyways. They're gonna go along with that. The member of parliament who introduced the 2009 Anti-Homosexuality Act is a guy named David Bahati.
I want to encourage you, my sister, to believe in a God of possibilities.
It's recently come to light that that member of the Ugandan parliament, David Bahati, who sponsored this legislation, is affiliated with the family.
Tax documents from the family show millions of dollars have gone into programs linked to David Bahati. Mr. Bahati is also secretary of the family's Parliament Fellowship in Uganda.
The family did take steps to oppose the bill, much too little and much too late, and mainly to protect their own image. And this is what David Bahati says. He says, look, when they would call me to talk about it, they didn't tell me to withdraw the bill. They talked about damage control. They talked about appearances. And that really came to a head in February around the National Prayer Breakfast. The speaker for the prayer breakfast was supposed to be the Prime Minister of Spain, Zapatero. And at the last minute, they made the main speaker Hillary Clinton.
And I recently called President Museveni, whom I have known through the prayer breakfast, and expressed the strongest concerns about a law being considered in the Parliament of Uganda.
And she denounced the bill in pretty strong terms, and so did Barack Obama.
But surely we can agree that it is unconscionable to target gays and lesbians for who they are.
And I think the family said, we've done what we needed to do. And meanwhile, at that point, the bill was just sort of still hurtling toward passage.
I know for sure that the 8th Parliament will pass this bill.
Embassies in Uganda began speaking up publicly against the bill. The U.S. ambassador started speaking publicly on the record, opposing the bill.
It looks like the bill is locked up in committee now, and that does have to do with Museveni realizing that this was going to hurt him internationally. But on top of it, he'd gotten all the benefits. He'd whipped up a witch hunt. He had convinced Ugandans that he was standing up to the decadent West. He wins, and Uganda loses.
It hurts me that I can't go back to my country, but I think I need to be happy. I think I need to be happy. I need to start a new life altogether.
I'm going back to Uganda to ask the Ugandan government to question the religious groups that are spreading a lot of hate and homophobia. if what they are doing is not bringing a genocide in Uganda. And it's about time the government of Uganda asked these religious groups, are you here to preach love or are you here to preach hate?
Strengthen you in all goodness and might, to your servant with your saints.
David was a mentor, David was a teacher, David was a brother.
On January 26, 2011, outspoken LGBT activist David Kato was murdered in Uganda. He was beaten to death with a hammer in his home. Kato was a close friend and associate of Frank Mugisha.
I kept on hoping it might be wrong, it might be a mix-up or something. But after they told me it's him, I started thinking now and looking back, how did it happen? What are the things that David was telling me that could have caused this?
Just weeks before his death, Kato led a successful lawsuit against the Ugandan newspaper known as Rolling Stone, which had published the names and photos of homosexuals, along with the caption, "Hang them."
We had just won the Rolling Stone case, Rolling Stone Uganda, where the Rolling Stone was outing people and calling for people to be killed, gay people to be killed in Uganda. My name was there. David's picture was on the front page. But these people should be responsible for David's murder because they called for him to be killed, and we sued them and won the case, and David was one of the plaintiffs.
David lived his life and he did what God wanted him to do, to fight for people's freedom. He died a horrible death, but he was buried with dignity instead of bigotry. David was buried with dignity. My name is Moses, and I am from Uganda.
In July 2010, 5 months after first speaking out at the National Prayer Hour, Moses revealed his identity.
I did not basically do it for my own sake. No, it was to help other people who are like me, who are living in bondage, as I might call it.
He temporarily moved to San Francisco to pursue his asylum case.
So when I came here and went to the Castro and looked at the flags everywhere in the area, I felt like, wow, people can be free. I mean, to this extent. I mean, they can do whatever they want to do and no one cares. I think it was so amazing, but again shocking, because how in the world can you have all these flags? I mean, instead of maybe the US flag or the state's flag, but having a rainbow flag flying over. I mean, this was something that shocked me.
After Moses revealed his identity, the Ugandan magazine Red Pepper ran a 3-page article calling him a, quote, gay monster, and distorting facts about his youth. Red Pepper also published a photo of his family. Moses' case for asylum is still pending.
Through telling my story, it has called people's attention, and many people just want to find out who this Moses is and what the story is all about, and if it's, what he's talking about is actually true, and it has compelled, some people to go to Uganda and find out what is exactly taking place there.
The situation for other LGBT Ugandans remains critical.
A gay person said in Uganda, I cannot stand 200 meters near Frank because I fear I could get in the media any minute or I could get arrested.
The 2009 anti-homosexuality bill is still pending in Uganda's parliament. Its supporters are also incorporating language from the original bill into new bills for consideration.
Every new day I get a different feeling. Today I woke up with a feeling that the law could be passed. Anti-gay legislators are using other legislations to criminalize homosexuality. For example, there is a bill that is coming up, which is in cabinet. It's called the anti-pornography bill. They have totally smuggled the anti-homosexuality bill and placed it in there.
On December 13, 2010, Frank Mugisha was joined by the UN Coalition of Faith to deliver his message to keep international pressure against the bill.
I mean, every person listens to America. So support the progressive movements in Africa so that they can also have a stand. They can have moral support, speak out, go and visit them, go and give them moral support, be with them when they are facing all these challenges in Africa.
As of the date of this broadcast, Frank Mugisha is back in Uganda.
The damnation of your own soul, is it worth it?
Sinful is how conservative preachers describe, demonize, and oppose full equality for LGBT people. Yet progressive religious leaders provide a counterweight, preaching full LGBT inclusion to their congregations. Next, we feature Reverend Dr. Welton Gaddy, who put his career on the line, writing a paper that looks to the U.S. Constitution to make the case for equality.
Hello and welcome. I'm Reverend Welton Gaddy. Well, let's face it, religion and the LGBT community historically has not had a very good relationship.
Joining us now is Reverend Dr. Welton Gaddy. He is a Baptist minister in Monroe, Louisiana, and full disclosure, he's my friend. When we look at Welton, we sort of see Jerry Falwell, but then he starts to talk, and it's a whole new world.
National Day of Prayer had been hijacked by right-wing extremists.
He's saying the exact opposite of what Falwell ever said in terms of the importance of the separation between church and state and in terms of tolerance and respect for diversity. And that's powerful.
Welcome, everyone, to State of Belief is a radio program sponsored by the Interfaith Alliance. I've been at the Interfaith Alliance now going on almost 12 years. Interfaith Alliance is an organization that reflects the diversity of religion in this nation and advocates for religious freedom and works against the manipulation of religion by politics, but also the manipulation of politics by religion.
When Welton did the Interfaith Alliance paper on same-sex marriage, he subtitled it A Call to Quiet Conversations and Public Debates. Welton's point is that religion and the state must be separate, both for the health of the government and for the health of religion.
To oversimplify grossly, one, it had to do with the nature of marriage, which in the United States is a legal issue, not a religious issue. And it had to do with whether or not religious institutions have the right to either deny marriage to someone or engage in facilitating marriage because of the faith tradition.
One of the points that Welton makes, and I think it's powerful coming from a minister, is that he says that, listen, every religious faith has its own ideas about marriage. Every religious faith also has its own ideas about divorce.
The government grants divorces given the circumstances of a particular relationship. And the government does not try to please any religious institutions in the decision it makes about divorces.
Right now, there are a lot of religious traditions that say that divorce is totally verboten, but we go to the government to get divorced. We don't go to the church to get divorced in the same way. And that sort of point, sort of calling us out on our principles about how we let religion and government handle different issues because they're good at handling different issues for the way we get along as a society and a country, I think is basic and interesting.
And so that's why fine to have a discussion about the Bible, but when we're dealing with a legal matter, whether it's same-gender marriage or many of the other issues that are controversial in our nation, let's start with the Constitution, which is the same document that gives us the religious freedom to say yes or no as religious people. And I want everybody in this nation, whether they embrace faith or not, to have the rights that are offered by the Constitution, regardless of their position on a particular religious issue. One trait of authentic religion is freedom. And so I won't ever try to drag a person kicking and screaming into a religious confession or a religious devotion. But I will say to everybody, the door's open, and you can be a religious person and be who you are.
Thank you for watching In the Life. To learn more about the issues in tonight's program, or to tell us your thoughts about the show, text ITL to 69866 on your mobile phone, or visit itlmedia.org.
To the gates of paradise, lead your child home. To your mercy seat, lead your child home. To the kingdom of heaven, lead your child home.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation, Patricia Kind in honor of her brother, Henry van Ameringen, Arcus Foundation, the estate of Richard W. Weiland, and by the annual support of In the Life members like you.